Nothing needs to begin. What you're feeling is something settling. Not everything that feels like a new start is actually a fresh beginning. Often what looks like a launch, the to-do list, the new plan, the next push, is a response to inner unrest. What I'm inviting you to consider is simpler, quieter. Before the visible changes arrive, something inside you rearranges itself. That inward rearrangement is settling. It is not more doing. It is a soft alignment that makes action feel easier, clearer, and less frantic. Take one slow breath with me. Inhale. Exhale. As you breathe out, notice one tiny thing right now that you can feel grateful for. The weight of the chair, a steady pulse in your wrist, the way light hits a corner of the room. If that landing felt possible, stay with that sensation for a moment. If it didn't, that's fine too. The work begins here, by noticing, not by forcing. How does settling work? Imagine your life as a pond. When you toss pebbles into the water, plans, deadlines, worries, the surface ripples. Those ripples look like activity. But beneath the surface, the water has a temperature and a current. What settles the pond is not throwing out fewer pebbles. It is the quieting of the current under the surface. The clearer the water, the truer the reflections, the calmer the water, the more accurately what is meant to come can come. Another image. You have an inner gravitational center. Everything you think, say, and feel sends a soft signal into that field. The tone of that signal, anxious, open, bitter, curious, grateful, changes the pattern of what returns to you. Think of it less like a magic trick and more like tuning a radio. When you shift frequency, different stations come in clearer. The mechanics are not the point. The lived result is, things begin to unfold with more ease, not because you worked harder, but because your inner lineup shifted. You might be wondering if this is all just a subtle form of wishful thinking. That's a fair question. What I'm pointing to are tendencies and correlations discovered in everyday life, the small shifts in orientation that often precede a change in outward circumstance. They are not guarantees. They do not erase structural difficulties, illness, loss, or the complexities of mental health. They are invitations to notice how you move through the world and to try small practical ways to tilt your inner weather toward steadiness. Look at these ordinary scenes. Notice how the inner settling precedes the outer ease. Millie the baker used to rise before dawn with a checklist like armor. She worried each morning that yesterday's loaf wouldn't sell. One week, she began each shift by placing her hand on the warm flour sift and whispering quietly, "Thank you for today." Her hands relaxed. Customers started telling her they came for the bread because something in the shop felt like home. And a man left an envelope of a local writer's note about her sourdough, folded like a small blessing. Emmett, the mail carrier, always hurried. He counted his route like a series of obstacles to beat. On a rainy Tuesday, he paused under a porch to watch a small sparrow shake off the storm. Later, he found himself saying good morning to two houses he'd always passed. And one of those mornings, the homeowner came out to hand him a cup of coffee and ask about his day. The rhythm of his work felt lighter after that, as if the route itself had softened. Clara the florist had a tiny stall near the subway. Sales were erratic and the supply chain felt like a series of cliffs. She started an evening ritual of sitting with the spent stems, honoring what had bloomed that day. She kept no long manifesto, just a small tally of 3 things that had shown up well. Within a month, a wedding planner who loved the honest, simple bouquets began hiring her for intimate ceremonies. The orders arrived not as a plan, but as a series of gentle yeses. Ivy, a jewelry maker, had a drawer full of unfinished pieces. Perfectionism froze her hands. She began to wear one half-finished ring just to see what it felt like. Wearing the ring, she noticed how people complimented something that looked lived in, not factory perfect. Those comments gave her permission to finish pieces with less pressure. A local shop owner asked if she could supply a small holiday table. Ivy said yes without over-polishing, and the orders came in a soft wave. June, a barista, used to brace herself for the morning rush as if it were a battle. One morning she decided to greet each person with a full second of eye contact and an earnest, "How's your morning?" The pause was small, but people started pausing back. Regulars lingered, conversations grew warmer, and a weary commuter told her, "You make the morning bearable," then left a painted postcard taped to the counter for everyone to see. Nora, who sells candles and small talismans online, felt invisible in the crowded marketplace. She changed the language on her product pages from "buy now" to "made to hold close," and rewired descriptions toward care. The words landed differently. Customers began to leave notes about how the candle helped them mark a simple ritual, and someone commissioned her to create a set for a friend's birthday. The orders were modest, but pleasurable and steady. Calvin, retired and making wooden spoons, discovered he worked best when he started the day with the same cloth over his shoulder and a slow cup of tea. That small ceremony settled his hands. People discovered his spoons not because he advertised more, but because friends began gifting them and posting photos. A neighborhood cook bought one, and then thanked him in person for the feel of the wood in her palm. Floyd, a gardener, would push himself to finish every patch the same week. After hurting his back, he learned to set one end of the garden for rest. When he tended that corner with curiosity rather than urgency, the soil seemed to cooperate. Seedlings that had struggled the month before found space to thrive. Neighbors started swapping cuttings with him without being asked. Glenn, a painter, sat months with a canvas that felt stubborn. He began showing up for 30 minutes each morning with no agenda but to smear color and see what happened. The act of returning without an outcome softened his edges. A gallery owner who walked by one day felt the change and offered him a small show. The show wasn't a blockbuster, but it reminded him why he painted. Veronica, a dance teacher, used to talk to herself in commands between classes. She swapped those internal orders for a brief phrase, "Move with me," and imagined the phrase as if she were inviting rather than ordering. The students began to relax. The studio's energy shifted from performance pressure to play. People returned for classes they had thought they'd left behind. Chester, a watchmaker, found his hands trembled when a repair would not go as planned. He started to breathe more deliberately before opening any case, feeling the metal cool under his fingers. The calm returned some of his finesse. One day, a client brought an heirloom watch and stayed to tell him the story of the family who'd owned it. The repair felt like a shared right rather than a transaction. Viola, a seeker, had spent years cataloging self-help books. She stopped collecting tips and instead spent 5 minutes each night naming what she had felt grateful for that day. Not achievements, but small openings. A neighbor's smile, a cool breeze, a clear mug. After a season of this, she noticed opportunities arriving that matched those small joys. A part-time job at a community garden, a friendship that began in a coffee line. Daryl, a mailman who left small sticky notes of encouragement on some doors, did not know if anyone ever read them. One week he found a reply slipped into his bag, a child's drawing with a thank you. He started to leave notes only on days when he felt light. Those days multiplied. A nurse I know would hold a patient's hand for an extra breath when she felt rushed. That same patient later asked if the nurse could help orchestrate a goodbye letter for the family. The act of slowing down did not heal every wound, but it opened a different way of being in the room that mattered to people in ways that were more human than medical. These are not stories of miraculous rescue. They are small, connective threads that reveal the same pattern. An inner settling, a small ritual, a shift in language, a centering breath, preceded a change in how things responded. The outside rearranged itself around an inner tone. What does it look like to practice settling? Here are simple micro-routines you can try. None of them require grand conviction. Each one asks for a small experiment. 1. Nightly 5. Small graces. 3 or 5 minutes. Each evening, name 5 small things that touched you that day. Not your headline successes, but smaller touches. A warm coffee, a reliable bus driver, a clear sentence in a book, a bird on a wire. Write them or say them quietly before bed. The task is not to manufacture gratitude, but to notice what already landed. Try this for a week, and see if your inner weather tilts toward noticing rather than scarcity. 2. The one-word reframe, 30 seconds, multiple times a day. When you notice tension, choose one soft word to hold for the next minute. open, allow, enough, curious. Keep it simple and believable. Speak it in your mind as you breathe. The word functions like a tiny anchor that reorients your tone. Use it before emails, before meetings, or when you wash dishes. 3. The 2-minute stillness before action. Before you start one important task, a meeting, an artistic session, a call, take 2 minutes to close your eyes, breathe, and feel where you are in your body. Ask one question. What would ease feel like right now? Then start. This short pause often redirects energy from urgency to clarity. 4. The emotional ladder, 1 step. If you are feeling heavy, anxious, embarrassed, angry, do not attempt to leap to joy. Move 1 small step up, angry to annoyed, anxious to curious, heavy to steady. Name the step aloud. I am moving from anxious to curious. Wait 30 seconds and notice what changes in your choices. Tiny shifts create more sustainable movement than forced leaps. 5. Accepting the compliment practice, ongoing micro-moment. When someone compliments you, pause for a beat and say thank you without diminishing the praise. If a thought arises, they're exaggerating, let it pass. Practice simply receiving. The habit of receiving shifts the internal scarcity story. 6. Language repair, minutes. Scan the words you say about your day. I have to. I can't. I must. Try swapping one of those daily into I choose to or I prefer to. See how the feeling of agency softens without creating pressure to overhaul your life. These practices are intentionally small because settling is not a big program. It is an accumulation of tiny adjustments that create a new tone. You are not broken if they feel difficult. You are practicing a muscle. A few cautions to keep us steady. Settling is not a cure-all. If you are in a situation of abuse, chronic illness, or deep trauma, settling practices are not a substitute for professional help, concrete safety planning, or systemic change. They are supportive tools, additional ways of tending the inner terrain while you navigate necessary external steps. If you find yourself feeling blamed by a message that suggests your inner state alone explains outward hardship, step back. Structural realities, historical injustices, and health conditions are real and require responses beyond inner recalibration. Also, avoid turning settling into a performance, another checklist to master. The posture here is not achievement, it is invitation. Try small adjustments with curiosity and gentleness and notice what shows up. If nothing appears to change outwardly, the practice still changes the quality of your day, which is its own worth. Let's reframe the language many of us use around manifestation or law. Think of these words as describing an operating tendency, rather than an absolute rule. When you consistently set a calmer inner tone, you tend to see different opportunities, clearer interactions, and a smoother felt sense of life. That tendency does not remove the need for discernment, work, or boundaries. It simply shifts what you notice and how you move. So what does it mean, finally, to say, nothing is beginning, something is settling? It means the part of you that knows how to hold life is remembering its posture. It is a reorientation more than a restart. You do not need to invent a new person to find different responses in your days. You need to remember how to lean toward steadiness and to practice the language, rituals, and movements that help steady your hands. We often assume change must arrive as a spark, a big event, a decisive pivot. But sometimes the most powerful work is happening quietly, under the surface. Habits aligning, thresholds being crossed without fanfare, a heart learning to pace itself. That is the settling I am pointing to. Small shifts accumulated rearrange the field. Here is a simple guided settling you can do now. Sit comfortably. Soften your shoulders. Close or lower your eyes if that feels safe. Take 2 slow breaths. On the first inhale, notice where tension lives in your body. On the exhale, imagine a tiny patch of stillness settling there, like a dusting of snow on a windowsill. On the second inhale, name one small grace from today. Again, not a highlight reel, but a small detail. A warm tea, a clear mile, a phone call, a bird sound. On the exhale, say to yourself, something is settling. Notice the tone of that sentence. Not command, not demand, a recognition. Let your body soften into that recognition for another breath. When you're ready, open your eyes or lift your gaze. Keep the softness you just found in the small places it can live. The way you make tea, the way you answer a text, the way you hang your coat. The goal is not constant equanimity. It is the ability to return again and again to an inner center that steadies before it acts. If you want one practical next step today, try the nightly 5 small graces for 7 nights. Each night, write them down or say them aloud. No commentary, no proof-seeking, just the noticing. See if, after 7 nights, your language about your day begins to change. If it does, gentle congratulation, you are participating in a quiet rearrangement. Remember also to be gentle when results do not mirror your hopes. Settling shifts how you show up. It does not promise that every external circumstance will bow to your intent. It does, however, change the color with which you experience the world. More notice, more attunement, often more invitations that match your new tone. There is a steadying intelligence in returning attention to small things. It is not heroic. It is not glamorous. It is the ordinary work of shaping an inner climate where life feels possible. You will not always do it perfectly. You will forget. That is part of being human. The practice is to return, so breathe once more. Feel your feet. Find one small thing you are willing to carry forward from this moment. One word, one practice, one image. Maybe it will be the phrase, something is settling. Maybe it will be to notice 5 small graces tonight. Maybe it will be to accept a compliment and simply say, thank you. Nothing is beginning. Something is settling. Let that settle into your bones. Let it soften your shoulders. Let it rearrange the way you move through today. If this message landed with you, consider starting with the single breath and grace practice now. And if you would like a fuller sequence of practices, there is a guided set linked in the description for those who want a gentle, structured way to settle week by week. No pressure, just an offer. Carry this with you. The world often answers the tone you hold before you act. Keep choosing small steadinesses, curiosity, gratitude, a single tiny ritual, and watch how the field around you responds, quietly and steadily, as something inside you settles.